I used to believe that silence was the safest place to hide. Not the kind that echoes through an empty room, but the kind that lives inside a person, the kind that muffles your thoughts before they reach your lips. For years, I lived within that silence, building walls out of unspoken words, pretending the distance was protection. But silence, I have learned, is not peace. It's a prison built of fear and memory. My name is Ava, and this is the story of everything I tried to forget. It began on a morning that looked like every other morning. The city was awake, but half asleep. The streets shimmered faintly under the early light, and the air carried the weight of something I couldn't name. The same heavy stillness that comes before a storm, only this wasn't a storm of weather. It was something quieter, something waiting inside me. I had returned to this city after 8 years. 8 years of running away, of starting over, of convincing myself that the past could stay buried if I just stopped speaking its name. But cities don't forget. They hold your footsteps like secrets, and when you come back, they whisper them back to you. The apartment I rented overlooked the river, not because I liked the view, but because it reminded me of movement, of escape. Every evening, the light spilled across the water in 1,000 shifting colors, like time refusing to stay still. I would sit by the window and watch the ferries drift by, wondering how something could move endlessly and still go nowhere. There were moments when I almost felt like myself again, moments when I could breathe without remembering. But the thing about memory is that it doesn't knock. It just walks right in. It started with a voice on the radio, familiar, unshakable, a voice I had tried to erase from every corner of my life. His voice. Daniel. They said he was back in the city, hosting a late-night show, talking about music, about life, about second chances. I hadn't heard that name in 8 years, and yet the sound of it still rearranged the air around me. I told myself it didn't matter. People change, cities change, feelings fade. But the truth was simpler and crueler. I hadn't changed at all. I had just learned how to hide it better. That night, I turned off the lights and listened. The voice floated through the static, calm and careful, like someone talking from the other side of a dream. He spoke about time, how it folds, how it repeats itself, how some people are meant to meet more than once in a lifetime. And I realized then that he wasn't just talking to an audience, he was talking to me. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I walked through the city until the sky began to fade. The streets were empty, except for the ghosts of the past that followed quietly behind. Every corner felt familiar, like an unfinished sentence waiting for the rest of its words. I stopped at the cafe we used to go to, the one with the cracked tiles and the broken clock that never told the right time. It was still there, untouched by the years. The same music hummed in the background, the same smell of roasted coffee and rain-soaked streets. I sat by the window, tracing the rim of my cup, and wondered what it meant to return to the place where everything ended. Was I searching for closure, or for the version of myself I left behind? When Daniel and I met, we were both running from something. He from failure, I from fear. He was the kind of person who saw beauty in everything broken, who believed that every scar was just another kind of light. I loved him for that. I hated him for it too, Because when you love someone like that, they don't stay. They move through your life like a season, beautiful, fleeting, inevitable. The last time I saw him, it was winter. The kind of winter that steals all color from the world. He had dreams bigger than this city, and I was too afraid to follow. He told me that love wasn't enough if it kept you standing still. And then he left. Just like that. No goodbye, no promise, only silence. Now, 8 years later, that silence had followed me back. There's something cruel about time. It doesn't heal you. It just teaches you how to pretend you're not still bleeding. For days, I tried to ignore the radio. I avoided the places that reminded me of him, but memory has a way of reshaping the world until every sound, every scent, every face becomes a reflection of what you lost. I started hearing his voice in every song, seeing his shadow in strangers passing by. I told myself it was just nostalgia, a trick of the mind, a ghost of who I used to be. But then, one night, the phone rang. No one called me at that hour. The city outside was asleep, wrapped in the kind of silence that hums with danger. I hesitated before answering. A breath, a pause, and then, quietly, "Eva?" It was him. The world seemed to tilt. My hands went cold. I didn't know whether to hang up or breathe. He spoke like no time had passed, his tone steady, familiar. "I heard you were back." My throat tightened. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words refused to come. He continued, "There's something I need to tell you, something I should have said a long time ago." The line went quiet for a moment. The sound of his breath filled the space between us, heavy with all the things we never said. Then, softly, "Can we meet?" I didn't answer, not then. I hung up and sat in the dark until the sun began to rise. That night marked the beginning of everything I thought I had buried. The next morning, I woke up to find an envelope slipped under my door. No name, no return address, only a single line written across the front in handwriting I recognized instantly. "You were never supposed to come back." My chest tightened. It couldn't be Daniel. He wasn't the kind of man who wrote threats. Or maybe I never really knew the kind of man he had become. I turned the envelope in my hands for a long time before opening it. Inside was a photograph, old, creased, and slightly faded. It was taken in the city square years ago. In the picture, Daniel and I stood together, laughing. But what made my blood run cold wasn't us. It was the shadow behind us. A third figure, blurred, watching. Someone I didn't remember being there. I searched the back of the photo for clues, but there was only a date. A date I would never forget. The night before Daniel left the city. I wanted to believe it was just a coincidence, a cruel trick of time. But somewhere deep down, I felt it. Something had followed me here. Later that evening, I walked through the city again, every sound sharper than before. The streets no longer felt like home. They felt like a map of forgotten sins, like every step could lead me back to something I didn't want to find. When I passed the old bookstore near the station, I saw a figure standing inside, tall, still, watching me through the glass. My breath caught. For a moment, I thought it was him. But when I stepped closer, the figure vanished into the rows of books, leaving only the faint echo of a door closing. I wanted to leave, to run, but my curiosity anchored me in place. I entered the bookstore. The smell of old paper filled the air. There was no one there, only an open book lying on the counter. Its pages were filled with letters, names, and dates written in Daniel's handwriting. The last line stopped my heart. If she ever comes back, tell her the truth. The lights flickered. Someone was in the room with me. I turned, but the doorway was empty. Only silence. Only that same unbearable stillness. I grabbed the book and ran. Back in my apartment, I opened it again, my hands trembling. Between the pages, I found a folded piece of paper. A letter, sealed but never sent. It was addressed to me. My name written in his hand. I didn't open it right away. Some truths are heavier than silence, and I wasn't ready for either. I left it on the table and tried to calm my mind, but my reflection in the window caught my attention. There, across the street, under the dim light of the lamppost, stood the same shadow I had seen in the photograph. It didn't move, didn't turn away, just watched. I pulled the curtains shut. My heart raced until it hurt. I wanted to believe it was just paranoia, that I was inventing ghosts where there were none. But the next morning proved otherwise. When I finally opened Daniel's letter, the first words shattered everything I thought I knew. Eva, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it out. The letter continued, each line carving deeper into the silence around me. There are things I never told you, things I couldn't. The night I left, I wasn't running from us. I was running from what I'd done. They told me it was an accident, but it wasn't. Someone wanted me gone. And if you've come back, it means they've found you too. I dropped the paper. My entire body felt cold. Was he dead? Was this some kind of message from the past? Or was I being dragged into something that began long before I understood it? Then the phone rang again. A man's voice this time, unfamiliar, low, measured. You should have stayed away, Ava. Before I could answer, the line went dead. For the next few days, I lived between fear and obsession. I couldn't stop thinking about the photograph, the letter, the voice. I started digging through old records, news articles, anything connected to Daniel's disappearance. That's when I found it. A headline from 8 years ago, buried deep in the archives. Local radio journalist found dead in a mysterious fire. The photo attached was Daniel's, but the date was 2 weeks after he had supposedly left the city. And below the article, a single line written in red ink, not printed, but added by hand. He knew too much. Nothing felt real anymore. Had Daniel faked his death, or had someone made sure I believed he had? The only person who might have answers was the one who didn't want me to find them. That night, I returned to the radio station where Daniel used to work. The building was half abandoned now, cracked windows, peeling posters, the air thick with dust and memory. As I walked down the hallway, every light flickered, as though the place itself recognized me. I reached the studio, his studio, and pushed the door open. Inside, everything was frozen in time. The microphone still stood in the center. The old coffee cup, half cracked, sat beside it. On the desk, a single cassette tape waited. It was labeled simply 4E. I pressed play. Static. Then his voice. "If you found this, it means I failed. They were right behind me that night. I thought I could protect you by leaving, but I was wrong. Eva, none of this was random. What happened to us, to me, started long before we met. It started with a story they didn't want told. Then a sound, a door creaking, footsteps, and his voice again, whispering, 'If you ever see the man in the gray coat, run.'" The tape ended. But before I could even take a breath, I heard something outside the studio. A door slammed, then footsteps. Slow, heavy, coming closer. I turned off the recorder and hid behind the console. Through the narrow window of the door, I saw him. A tall man in a gray coat, his face hidden in the dim corridor light. He stopped right outside the studio door. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then the handle turned. The door handle turned, slow enough to make every second feel like a lifetime. I didn't breathe, didn't move. Then, silence. The footsteps stopped outside. For a moment, I thought maybe he had left, that it was just my imagination. But then, from the other side of the door, a voice spoke, calm, deliberate, and chillingly familiar. "Eva, you shouldn't be here." It wasn't Daniel. It was someone else, someone who knew my name. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. The man tried the handle again, then stopped. A faint metallic sound, like a key sliding into the lock. I had seconds. I darted to the back exit of the studio, pulling open the maintenance door. The hinges screamed. I ran down the narrow corridor, every echo of my footsteps chasing me like a shadow. Behind me, I heard the door burst open, and the sound of boots following fast. I reached the stairwell, descended 2 floors, and burst out into the night air. The street was empty, drenched in light from the flickering neon sign above the station entrance. I didn't stop until I reached the bridge. For a moment, I leaned over the railing, gasping, my hands trembling. The city lights blurred in my vision, and then I saw it. Across the street, in the reflection of the glass, that same gray coat, watching from the distance. Whoever he wasn't just following me, he was hunting me. That night, I couldn't go home. I went instead to a hotel by the river, the kind of place where no one asked questions. I sat on the bed, holding the cassette in my hands, listening to the faint hum of the city through the thin walls. Daniel's voice still echoed in my head. "If you ever see the man in the gray coat, run." But run where? From who? I needed answers, and there was only one person who might still have them. Clara. Clara had worked with Daniel at the station. She disappeared soon after the fire, and rumors said she'd left the country. But I remembered something Daniel once said. Clara doesn't leave, she hides. So I started searching. Old contacts, messages, forgotten corners of the internet, until finally I found an address linked to her name, an old art studio on the edge of the city. The place was half collapsed, its windows boarded up. Inside, the air smelled of paint, dust, and time. And there she was. Older, thinner, eyes darkened by secrets. She didn't seem surprised to see me. "I wondered how long it would take you," she said softly. "He said you'd come." I felt my throat tighten. "You mean Daniel?" She nodded. "He tried to stop them, but you can't stop something that feeds on silence." "What are you talking about?" I asked. She hesitated, then walked to a shelf and pulled out a folder, thick with papers, photographs, recordings. "This," she said, "is what he died for." Inside the folder were reports, transcripts, leaked documents, all tied to the same name, the Meridian Project. It was a corporate experiment, a secret psychological study on memory manipulation, conducted through mass media. The goal was simple: reshape collective memory through repetition, sound, and emotion. Daniel had stumbled upon it while working on his show. He had discovered that some of the stories he'd been asked to air weren't stories at all. They were trials. He tried to expose them, but the night before he went on air, the studio burned. My chest tightened. "You think they killed him?" She looked at me, her expression unreadable. "I don't think, Eva. I know." I stood there, frozen, the room spinning. Then I noticed something in the folder. A photo. It was me. At first I didn't understand. It was from years ago, before I met Daniel, taken from a distance. Notes scribbled beside it, Subject E, Recovered Memory Patterns, Phase 3. "What is this?" I whispered. Clara sighed. "You were part of it too, you just don't remember." The world went silent. I backed away, shaking my head. "No, I wasn't." But the memories came uninvited and brutal. Flashes, a white room, voices asking questions, a screen showing images of people I never met, or maybe once had. And then Daniel's face. Smiling, reassuring. He had known all along. Clara stepped closer. "He fell in love with you, Ava. That wasn't part of the plan. That's why they erased it. That's why they erased you." Before I could speak, a sound came from outside. Footsteps. Heavy. Precise. Clara's eyes widened. "They found us!" The lights went out. I heard glass shatter, a door slammed, someone shouted. Clara pushed me toward the back exit. "Go," she hissed. "Don't look back." But I couldn't leave her. I turned just in time to see the man in the great coat step out of the shadows. His face was half hidden, but his eyes, cold and calculating, met mine. He aimed something at Clara. A flash of light, a sound that cut through the dark. She fell. I screamed, but my voice drowned under the chaos. I ran, clutching the folder to my chest, into the labyrinth of the city. Hours later, I found myself back at the river. The world felt unreal, like a film I couldn't pause. My reflection in the water looked like a stranger. Daniel's letter, Clara's death, the photograph, all of it blurred into one impossible truth. I had been part of something designed to make people forget, and Daniel had died trying to make me remember. I opened the folder again. At the bottom, a note written in his handwriting. "If memory is the cage, love is the key. Find the horizon." The horizon? At first, I thought it was a metaphor, but then I realized the horizon wasn't an idea, it was a place, an abandoned facility outside the city, the original site of the Meridian Project. I knew what I had to do. The road to the horizon stretched like a scar across the city's edge, a long, forgotten highway leading into silence. No lights, no signs, only the hum of the engine and the echo of Daniel's words circling in my mind. If memory is the cage, love is the key. I didn't know what I expected to find there. Closure, maybe. Or the end. But something inside me knew this was where it began, where it all had been rewritten. By the time I reached the outskirts, dawn was a faint bruise across the sky. The facility rose ahead like a monument to everything broken. Gray concrete walls, rusted gates, windows like blind eyes staring back at the world that forgot them. The sign at the entrance read, Horizon Research Institute, closed since 2016. 8 years, the same amount of time since Daniel disappeared. The gates were chained, but someone had cut through them before me. Someone else had been here recently. I stepped inside. The air was thick with dust, the silence sharp enough to hurt. Every hallway looked the same, long, cold, lined with doors that led nowhere. My footsteps echoed off the walls, each sound swallowed by the emptiness. Then I saw it, a security panel still glowing faintly. Somehow, part of the building still had power. I pressed the button. The screen flickered to life. A voice recording played automatically. Project Meridian, Phase 4. Neural Reinstatement Trials. Authorized subjects, E01 through E07. My stomach dropped. E01. That was me. The screen changed again, showing a series of images, my face, Daniel's face, and others I didn't recognize. Lines connected us like a map of human memory, tangled and incomplete. A file opened next. I hesitated, then played it. Daniel's voice filled the room. Test subject E01 shows significant resistance to erasure. Emotional attachments remain active despite repeated neural cleansing. Subject displays spontaneous recall triggered by environmental stimuli, specifically music and sensory association. Recommend termination of Phase 4. I staggered back. He'd been part of it. Daniel, the one I loved, the one who warned me to run, had once been part of the experiment. My mind spun. Maybe he hadn't betrayed me. Maybe he'd been forced. But one thing was clear. He had known who I was long before I ever met him. I moved deeper into the facility, down a corridor marked Restricted Access. At the end was a single door. The keypad beside it was smashed, but someone had jammed it open. Inside was a lab, half destroyed, half frozen in time. Broken monitors, shattered glass, and in the center, a single operating chair surrounded by machinery that looked too intricate, too human. I ran my fingers along the cold metal, and the memories began to surface again. Not flashes this time, but whole scenes. Me, sitting in that chair, Daniel standing beside me, whispering, "It's just a test, Ava. You'll forget the pain. You'll forget everything that hurts." He hadn't lied. I had forgotten. Until now. A sound cut through the silence, the sharp click of a gun being cocked. "Step away from the chair," a voice ordered. I turned. The man in the gray coat stood in the doorway, closer now, his face finally visible, older, scarred, eyes cold as steel. "Who are you?" I demanded. He smiled, just barely. "You can call me what Daniel used to, the overseer." He took a step closer. "You shouldn't have come here. We had erased everything. You were supposed to live quietly, forget it all." "Why?" I asked. "What were you doing to us?" He tilted his head, studying me like a specimen. "You volunteered, Ava. You wanted to forget." The words hit like a blow. He continued, his tone almost kind. "You lost someone before all this. A brother, maybe. A child. The pain broke you. Daniel convinced you to join. The project promised peace, to erase trauma, replace it with new memories, new identities. You were our most successful case, until you started remembering." My hands trembled. "And Daniel?" "He couldn't handle the guilt, tried to shut us down. We couldn't allow that." "So you killed him?" The man sighed, almost regretfully. "He was a liability. But don't worry. He lives on inside you. Every subject carries an imprint of those they loved. It's the only way memory heals itself." My stomach turned. No, that's not possible." He stepped closer, raising the gun. "It's time to finish what he started. We'll clean the slate again. One more cycle, and you'll forget all of this. Him, me, everything." I backed against the chair. "You'll have to kill me first." He smiled faintly. "That's not how this works." The moment he reached for the trigger, the lights flickered, and a voice filled the room. Daniel's voice. "You don't get to erase her again." The speakers came alive, one by one, the sound of static bursting through the walls. Screens flickered, showing Daniel's face, recorded but alive in the machine. "Eva, I knew they'd come for you. The system still responds to my access codes. If you can hear this, follow the signal, find the core." The overseer turned, furious, firing a shot at the monitors, shattering glass. I used the moment to run. Down the hall, lights blazed to life, guiding me through the maze. I could hear Daniel's voice echoing from the speakers. "Keep going. Don't stop now." I burst into a control room filled with servers and old computers. In the center, a glowing console displayed a single command line. "Override system. Terminate project. Yes or no." The gunfire behind me grew louder. The overseer was close. I typed the command. "Why?" The system roared to life, alarms blaring, lights flashing red. A surge of static filled the air as power overloaded through the facility. The voice came again, soft, fading. "You did it, Eva. You're free now." The last thing I saw before everything went white was the horizon. sunlight breaking through the shattered roof, spilling across the room like redemption. When I woke, I was outside. The facility burned behind me, smoke rising into the sky like the ghosts of everything that once was. I didn't know how I'd survived. Maybe Daniel had saved me one last time. Maybe some part of him had always been inside me, guiding me home. As I walked toward the city, I realized something. The past isn't something you escape. It's something you carry until it teaches you how to live again. I reached into my pocket and found a small device, a recorder. When I pressed play, Daniel's voice whispered, barely audible, "The horizon isn't a place, Eva. It's the moment you stop looking back." The world felt different after the fire. Quieter. Lighter. As if something deep within the earth had finally exhaled. The city stretched before me. Familiar streets washed in pale morning light. People moving like ghosts of another time. Everything looked the same, and yet nothing was. I rented a small room near the coast, a place where the wind never stopped singing. There was an old piano downstairs. Every evening I played it. Soft, uncertain melodies that felt half remembered, half invented. Sometimes when I touched the keys, I swore I could feel him beside me. Daniel. Not as a memory, not as a ghost, but as something that lived quietly in the spaces between silence and sound. Days turned into weeks. The world didn't ask questions. It never does. People just move on, rebuild, forget. But I remembered. Not everything, not clearly, but enough. Enough to know that memory isn't the enemy. It's the proof that we lived. I found an old photograph once, half burned, edges curled. Two people standing at the edge of a horizon, faces hidden by the sun. Written on the back were 4 words. We begin again. D. I don't know if it was real, but maybe that doesn't matter. Because now, when I close my eyes, I see the horizon, golden, endless, alive. And I hear his voice again, soft as the tide. You don't need to remember me, Eva. Just keep moving toward the light. One evening, the sky turned crimson with the setting sun. I walked to the edge of the pier, the wind in my hair, the sea roaring below. For a moment, I thought I saw him standing there. Not as he was, but as I remembered him, smiling, at peace. He reached out his hand, and for the first time in forever, I didn't reach back. Instead, I whispered, "Goodbye, Daniel." The wind carried his name away, scattering it across the waves. And in that moment, I wasn't haunted anymore. That night, I started writing again. Not reports, not experiments, just stories. About loss, about memory, about the way people break and heal. I titled the first page, Whispers of the Horizon, because sometimes the end isn't the silence after the storm. It's the whisper that reminds you you survived.